So this is a long-awaited video. Long-awaited by me because I kept putting it off because I was never prepared enough. I never felt prepared enough. There's so much on this subject I want to say. But the truth of the matter is that I'm really short on time. So either I start this series or I don't. So yesterday was the feast of Saint Anthony of Padua. So I thought I'd start with one of my favorite saints to work with, who is the patron saint of my family. So you want to start working with spirits. I recommend that if you want to start working with spirits, that you start with saints. The reason why I recommend you start with saints is twofold. One, they're relatively safe. Two, they used to be human. So they lived on earth. They lived a human experience. Therefore, they are more likely to understand you. They are more likely to be able to guide you. And even though, even if you were to contact a saint who were last on earth 1,000 years ago, not much really has changed when it comes to human nature and the human experience. So let's begin. Today's video is about Anthony of Padua. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Anthony of Padua, and again, going back to that whole preparation or whatever, well, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to read out of my own book because I did do the preparation. It's all here. Most people, so the nice thing about starting with Saint Anthony of Padua is he's quite well known. He's a part of popular culture. He's the saint of lost objects, right? The patron saint of lost objects, or the patron saint of helping you find lost objects. People that are not even Catholic know to invoke Saint Anthony to find their lost keys because a Catholic friend told them, or a friend who has a Catholic friend told them about it. So it's incredible. And as far as asking Saint Anthony to help you find lost objects, guaranteed you'll find your object. Guaranteed. Unless it's been incinerated, it will be returned. It's I've tested this time and time again. It's spooky, people. It's spooky and it's really cool. So when you want, so let's start with the fundamental thing when you want to start working with a saint. You need to find out who they were before they became a saint. So let's first define what a saint is. A saint is a human being who lived on earth, who performed miracles that were cataloged by the Vatican, and after they died, all these miracles were investigated. Sometimes they begin investigation of miracles while the person is still alive. So they investigate these miracles, and if they find that in fact they are miracles, then the person goes into the next step, which is beatification. Beatification is they become beatified, which basically is that one step before becoming canonized a saint. So then another committee is held, meetings are held. Sometimes this could take years, sometimes it could take decades, sometimes it could take a century. Lately, it's been pretty quick, the process. I don't know. Maybe it's because they're digitized at the Vatican, but I digress. None of my business. I couldn't care less about what they do. Anyway, back to Saint Anthony. So you want to develop a relationship with a saint. And I'm going to use Saint Anthony as an example. But you can take what I talk about today and apply it to whichever saint that you wish to approach. So again, step one, find out who they were in life. And one, a surefire way to find out who they were in life is you could do a Google search and try to find a database that has saints with their biographies. Sometimes the biographies are, especially, if you're dating back like a couple, not a couple of thousand years, but if you're dating back like, hundreds of years ago, 1,000 years ago, it might be a little, sketchy in terms of what you find out about them. Sketchy in the sense that there's not a lot of information, but there's enough information to give you an idea of who they were. And to simplify things, most saints were human beings, so they were imperfect. So, you're going to read a lot of the same things. They were tradesmen, or they were the daughters of rich people, of businessmen, of merchants, or they were, you know what I mean? Like they come from, like they all pretty much have the same kind of stories because they were human beings, like us. All right. Once you find out who they were as people, and again, people, you know what I mean? I know a lot of you are at home and you won't have access to going to, you don't have to go anywhere to find this information. It's all on the internet. It's all free. It's all on the internet. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about Saint Anthony today because I actually wrote about him in my book. I try not to bore you too much with reading too much. But I want to tell you a little bit, because Saint Anthony of Padua is my family's, the patron saint of my family. I want to share with you the legend of Saint Anthony that was told to me many years ago. Now, I couch this in the language of the legend of Saint Anthony because I wasn't there. The person who told me the story wasn't there. This was passed down as oral tradition, or, you know what I'm saying? So let's begin. So, from my book, Italian Folk Magic, and it's on page 189 if you happen to have it and you want to follow along. That's kind of cute. Anyway, this is the legend of Saint Anthony told to me many years ago. Saint Anthony and Ezzelino di Romano, a cruel tyrant and feudal lord, were contemporaries. The story goes that it was, in fact, Saint Anthony who aided Ezzelino di Romano in finding his lost inner peace, thus making him repent all his past acts of cruelty. Saint Anthony was in a Franciscan monastery in Padua, Italy, and people would seek him out to get back their lost inner peace, lost serenity, and lost love with great success. So you see, it didn't start out with keys. One day, the provincial father of the Franciscan monastery had lost a magnificent antique painting of great value. He went to Saint Anthony and said to him, quote, "You who grant people back their inner peace and tranquility, can you please tell me what to do to find lost objects?" End quote. Saint Anthony instructed him to, quote, "Pray to God before going to bed, and tomorrow tell me about what you dreamt." End quote. The provincial superior did what the saint instructed him to do and found the painting that now hangs in the Basilica of Saint Anthony in Padua. From that day forward, Saint Anthony also became the finder of lost objects. Here's what you need to do to petition his help. And then it goes into a novena or a verse or whatever that's in my book, which honestly we'll discuss in a minute. So that's the legend that I was taught of Saint Anthony. So he started out as this guy, a brother in a monastery, and he was helping people find their lost peace, lost inner peace. And then this guy lost his painting, and he helped him find it. So it's cute. It's a legend. But it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. It doesn't matter whether it happened or not, because if you petition Saint Anthony, if you request him to help you find something, you will. But the reason why I wanted to read to you from my book, The Legend That I Was Taught, is that for me, Saint Anthony, the work that I do with Saint Anthony is far wider than just, Tony, Tony, come on down, something's lost and must be found. When I can't find my keys, or when I lose an important document, and or misplace an important document, and things like that. The work I do with Saint Anthony has is a little more profound than that. It is helping to when it comes to finding someone, for helping someone find their way, helping me find my way. Finding things that are not just physical objects, but finding things that are non-physical objects, things that are really important. Now, I'm going to share another story about Saint Anthony, just to show you how he can help you find something that's not just your car keys or parking spot, because people, oh my God, parking spots. It's awesome. But anyway, when my first daughter was born, my first child was born, brand new mom, no maternal figure to give me any guidance. Like, I had no one to guide me, no one, just me and my husband, and we were on our own, like a lot of people experience that no one really talks about. I didn't have my mom to guide me. She was unable to take care of herself. So, I'm an only child. I don't have any siblings. Yada, yada, yada. Anyway. And I lived far from... I had already moved out of my neighborhood of origin. So, we have that. My daughter... our little baby or whatever, there was a serious jaundice and dehydration situation going on. So our family doctor sent, we had her bilirubin checked, and I get a phone call from our family doctor saying take her to the hospital. We go to the hospital, and in hospital it was nighttime. There was hardly anybody around. It was already was creepy. Now, I'm a nurse and I find hospitals creepy. But anyway, I digress. I don't like... if you're a nurse out there, you know exactly what I'm saying. It's got to be really serious for us to go anywhere near a hospital as patients, or family members. You know what I mean? Like, serious. Anyway. Tangent. Sorry. Let's come back. Sitting in the hospital room by myself, with my baby, I prayed to Saint Anthony, help me, help me make this decision, because they were talking about putting my daughter under the lights, like a lot of babies get put under the lights, and something in my gut was telling me that's not what she needed, because she wasn't nursing properly. That's why she was dehydrated. I understood enough looking at my baby that she was dehydrated, and just something didn't feel right following the doctor's recommendation to stick her under the lights and stay there overnight. Something, you know what I mean? It's there's instinct, right? I know a lot of people call it intuition. For me, it's not intuition, it's instinct. We have human instinct. Intuition is a new age concept, but that's not for this conversation. Okay. So I prayed to Saint Anthony. I just held my baby and said, oh my God, Saint Anthony, help me. I don't know what to do. And I heard it in my head, clear as day. Go. So that's what I did. I collected my stuff, collected my baby, went to the nurse's station and said, yeah, I'm gonna go. And like the nurses are scrambling and saying, well, no, it's against medical recommendation, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, the whole legal, you know, legal lingo. And I said, oh, just have me, just pull out a form, I'll sign it. I just want to go home. We're going home. We're going to go. Went home, nursed my baby all night. And by morning already, I had seen an improvement. So that's my personal example of Saint Anthony helping me find the correct answer, or Saint Anthony helping me find the correct action. All turned out well. Even my family doctor, she was amazing. She's no longer my family doctor because we don't live there anymore, and she's probably long retired. But she was incredible. When the pediatrician called her to, like, you know, he had lost his temper on the phone with her, she said, my patient's a nurse. She used her own judgment, and it turned out okay. It turned out more than okay, so it turned out quite well. Because, you know, the following day, take my daughter, get the heel prick, check the bilirubin, everything within normal range. That was a miracle of Saint Anthony, because I heard a voice that I perceived as him telling me to go. All right, that's a long time to tell you stories. But, and I have other stories, and like I think I mentioned the one in my book. I think the one in my book is the one about my paternal grandmother, and she had an experience with Saint Anthony that I tell in my book. So this was all to illustrate that Saint Anthony is not just about finding lost objects, but that's a good place to start if that's where you are, and that's okay. I'm not here to say, oh, you need to start, and you know, you can't ask Saint Anthony of Padua to help you find your lost keys, or you know, your missing wallet, or you know, and all that stuff, and your missing passport, until you work with him. No, you don't even have to know who he is. Seriously. You don't even have to know who he is to ask him for help, and he will help you. All right. So, I'm going to just share with you a little bit some books that I recommend to start your journey on working with saints. And then some things that you could use. And you know me, everything is going to be easily accessible, either inexpensive or free. And so let's begin. So I've mentioned this book before, and it's because it is a wonderful book. It is not just about Catholic saints, but the title of the book is Mystics, Saints, and Sages, and this is the Encyclopedia of Mystics, Saints, and Sages by Judica Illes. It's a guide to asking for protection, wealth, happiness, and everything else. And this book is really like, okay, so I love this book, okay? I love this book a lot. I also love Judica a lot. And, but this book is invaluable. If you buy only one book on saint magic, make it be this one, because it's not just Catholic saints. She includes saints from all other religions, mystics, sages, you know, that you can work with, get to know and work with in order to better your life. I really love this book. And yeah, so in her Encyclopedia of Mystics, Saints, and Sages, Saint Anthony of Padua is on page 141. So she'll have, also known as Antoine, Antal, Anton, Antonio, Antanas, the different names from the different cultures, right? Epithets: the Wonder Worker, the Marrying Saint, classification: Roman Catholic saint, and she has a little bit of a bio here about him, where you know she begins with Saint Anthony was born in Lisbon, Portugal. Rejecting his wealthy background, he became a poor Franciscan, but eventually left the order, traveling to Morocco as a missionary. And, like, you know, it's a really nice bio on Saint Anthony. And then after the bio, there's attributes: fish, infant, lilies, which really helps a lot when you're, if you're one of those people, which I recommend, if you're going to get into saint magic, dream work goes hand in hand with saint magic, because dreams is the primary medium or primary manner of communication between humans and saints. Okay, saints will communicate to us through dreams, through dream symbolism, and Saint Anthony, fish, infants, lilies are three of the ones that I know, and they're also in her book. Spiritual allies. Anthony is frequently invoked along with Saint Lucy and Saint Martha. This also is good to know. Sacred day. Yesterday was the feast day of Saint Anthony. And in my culture, in Italian culture, the feast day of a saint is also what we call onomastico, which is the name day. And the Greek culture has the same tradition as well, the same custom as well, where people who are named, let's say, anyone who's named Anthony or derivatives of Anthony, Tony, Antonio. Yesterday was the feast day of Saint Anthony. It was their name day, and almost more special than your birthday, like a birthday, but depending on how religious or how dedicated to the saint the family is, the onomastico can often be more important than the birthday. And and what I didn't know is that his feast day is June 12th in Brazil. And number associated is the number 13. Italians, number 13 is a lucky number. And festival, the example that Judica gives is an annual feast at the end of August, honors Anthony in Boston's North End. And it's the largest Italian religious festival in New England. When I grew up in Montreal. I am from New England, but grew up, my aunt and uncle raised me, and I grew up in Montreal. And in Montreal, I remember that when I was a kid in the 70s, the feast day of Saint Anthony of Padua was celebrated on one of the Saturdays closest to June 13th. And it would be, it would be like a block party, like, big festa. There would be a procession of the statue of Saint Anthony. There would be food carts, people with, the sausage and peppers on the panini, the pizza fritta, which is the fried dough, prizes. It was like a carnival, right? There were prizes. I remember every year the big thing, the big prizes or the things that you could buy, like for kids, was plastic rosary beads, tambourines, inflatable animals. The kinds that, the blow-up animals like you use in the pool. Those things always died. They didn't last long. But, people. There was music. There was fireworks. Anyway. So, those of you who grew up in Montreal in the 70s may remember this. I remember, like, our parish was La Madonna di Pompei. And this is where this occurred. In Boston, Hartford, Connecticut. Anyway, I digress. Like, if you're from New England, somewhere that you lived, anywhere you lived, there was a feast going on. I know because I attended feasts in saint feasts in Montreal, and then when I spent the summer in the States, I used to, go to those feasts. My dad used to take me there. All right. Here's what's wonderful about Judica's book, and it's because it helps you start somewhere. People often ask me about offerings. Her book actually gives you a starting point about what an offering would be, an appropriate offering, or a traditional, not appropriate, that's like a bit of a harsh word, a traditional offering for the saint. So The example she gives here is offer him a single lily when making your request. A larger, more lavish bouquet should be presented upon fulfillment. Give him heart-shaped ex votos if invoking him as the patron of broken hearts. What else? Saint Anthony also appreciates charitable donations and efforts on behalf of hungry people and the welfare of domestic animals. A big cigar and a stiff drink may be appreciated too. This? Not just cigars. He also accepts cigarettes. And cigarettes and a stiff drink also work really well as offerings for Saint Anthony, I can assure you. All right, so this is a good book to get you started, and like everything else, when it comes to folk magic, magical work, books are there. People like me with videos are here to get you started. The rest is all you. You go, you know, roll up your sleeves and experience it for yourself. That's when you're really gonna feel the magic, experiencing it for yourself. It's nice to read about this kind of stuff, and it's nice to know about it, but when you put it in practice, for me, it never gets old. It always freaking amazes me. Not because I don't believe. It's not that I don't believe. I'm just a natural skeptic. And whenever my saints come through for me, the awe and wonder and the miracle never gets old. All right. So just a few more things before we go. So I talked about, like, my book has stuff, right? And Judica's book has stuff. These books, I've never been to a secondhand bookstore that didn't have one of these or some form of this, Lives of the Saints. I have this one. I have a really old one, leather bound. I like this one because the leather bound one has a lot of saints, but they're not, you're not going to find a book that has every saint in it. So, you flip through the book, and as long as it has the saints that you're interested in working with, start with that one. This is a really nice book that I found at a secondhand bookstore. Here's a section on Saint Anthony, and it has his bio as well. And it's nice. It's nice to read different versions of their biographies. It's also nice to see different artistic depictions of the saint. Now, remember, these are artistic renditions of what the saint looked like. They're artistic representations because they didn't have Polaroid or Kodak back in those days. But the really great part about that is that you're bound to find an artistic rendition of a saint that you want to work with that suits you best. So I have 4 prayer cards here I'm going to share with you. I also have I have my favorite one up there. So hang on, let me get the favorite one. And I'm back. All right. So I just took it down because my favorite one is actually quite large. So as I was saying, the more popular saints will have numerous artistic renditions for you to choose from. Also, nothing prevents you from creating your own. So I'll show you the ones that I have. So this is a pretty recent prayer card that I think I got this at St. Joseph's Oratory in 2018. So there's this one, and this is one of those. This is one of those modern prayer cards. It's laminated. On the front you have the artistic rendering of the saint, or artistic representation of the saint, And on the back, you have the prayer, the novena prayer. This is one, I think, this looks like something from the 1980s. And this is from, oh, yeah, I think this, no, it may be from the 70s. I think this is from one of those feasts that I described to you, because this is from the Our Lady of Pompeii Parish in Montreal. So this may be like, you know, from one of those feasts I just mentioned. This one was sent to me by my aunt when she was living, my Zia, who was Mother Superior in Ostia, with Ostia Lido, which is just outside of Rome. Which this is one of my favorites. I think this is probably one I've had since I was a very young child. Look at this thing. And this is my favorite one. So I got this, and it was a print, and I'm not really happy with how it, you know, I asked, anyways, I'm not happy with how it turned out here on this board, but I can't remove it without ruining it, so it stays on the board. This is my favorite. It's beautiful. Oh my God. Okay. The last thing I want to mention. Oh no, it's not the last thing. Oh my God, sorry. Let's talk about rituals. Let's talk about, so you can go to Walmart. Walmart often has novena candles, and that caters to the, you know, to the Latin population, where they'll have San Antonio, and there'll be even the novena prayer in Spanish on the back, and those are wonderful. Whenever I find those, I always buy them, because they already have the image of Saint Anthony on them and the prayer. And then you could take them home and you can dress, you know, you could dress the candle if you want. The top here, that's you can actually touch. I always recommend wiping down your novena candle with either a mix of sea salt and water, holy water, Florida water. I use all three of those with a damp cloth, and because, you know, it was manufactured, people touched it, it was sitting somewhere, you know what I mean? Like it's I just like to cleanse things before I use them. When I bring them home, I cleanse them, and then I store them for when I need them. The one I'm showing you is blank. There's a reason I'm showing you a blank one. Okay, so suppose you can't get to a Walmart or a Botanica or anywhere else that would have, or a Catholic gift shop. The Catholic gift shop where I live, it gouges, just absolutely gouges. Like, I don't, they have the plastic inserts that go, I have like these glass votives, novena votives that are beautiful, that I've had them over 20 years, but their plastic church inserts that they sell are like $10 a piece. That's gouging. That is gouging. Anyway, so I don't buy them. I get these at Dollar Tree. And Dollar Tree often will have Saint Anthony, Saint Michael, like the saints that I work with, La Madonna. But suppose all you have is this, or just a blank white candle. So we'll start with the ones that are glass. And you could do the same thing with an empty jar. An empty jar that you washed. Maybe it originally held strawberry jam, grape jelly, maybe peanut butter. Well, peanut butter usually comes in a plastic jar. Don't use that. So it could be just a jar, an empty jar that you have, and you could dress a tea light and drop it in, and that's just as good. What I'm trying to say is you don't have to go out and buy a whole bunch of shit to start working, well, a whole bunch of stuff you don't need to start working with saints. You don't even need a candle, but you know, I like the candle So I'm going to talk about the candle. If you have, you know, one of these, you can use a glue stick and apply that. You know, if you have one of these that you don't mind, because, you know, like once you glue it on, you're probably not going to be able to get it off, say, you know, without ruining it. But look how beautiful this is. So you could use, you know, you could use glue stick to glue it on. You can, if you have a color printer, you have access to a color printer, print one up from the internet that you like the best. Like, you know, do a Google image search, Saint Anthony of Padua, scroll through, find the image you like best, print it up on a color printer. If you don't have access to a color printer, Saint Anthony doesn't mind if you use black and white, grayscale, and glue stick onto one of these. Glue stick onto a regular jar. And you have your novena candle. So that's, and you can start there. And you could start by praying the prayer to Saint Anthony to ask him for something, or you can just start by lighting the candle and practicing gratitude, which is, I know, I'm sorry, because it's really overused, that term, practicing gratitude, but basically you could pray to Saint Anthony and you could tell him about all the things in your life that you're grateful for. You can offer Saint Anthony gifts, and gifts are acts of charity. Gifts are acts, random acts of kindness to your fellow human beings. Those are the kind of gifts that I tend to gravitate towards. Like, you know, lilies shkiv me. Like, I can't stand the smell of lilies. I can't even tell you. But so lilies not in my house. And Saint Anthony, he understands that in my house he's not going to get lilies. He'll get cigarettes. He'll get a stiff drink. He'll get some cognac. He'll get some good bourbon, some good cognac. But no lilies. But any act of charity. So donations, monetary donations, food to the food bank, any kind of charitable act that helps people in need is an offering to Saint Anthony. Then, if you don't need anything, you know what I mean? Like, usually it's human nature to seek out our saints when we're in desperate need of something, right? So I try to be mindful and not to call them up only when I need something, but I'm human. Me too. Sometimes it's terrible. It's like, you know, they haven't heard from me in months, sometimes years, and suddenly I'm calling on them because I'm desperate, because I need their help. They still show up. They're awesome that way. They're absolutely awesome that way. But it's nice to build a relationship with them, and I'll tell you why. Because when you build a relationship with them, you get to experience, when you're not in a distressed state, the miracle that they can perform just by simply sending you a gift. They can send you a gift. Ask them for gifts. And these gifts, like, I'm not saying that, it's not like they're going to send Amazon to your house with something from your wish list. But they might. They may inspire someone to go on your Amazon wish list and send you something. Ask them for gifts. You may be asking, well, you know, I'd like a sign that you are, you know, actually, you know, hearing me. Sorry about that. I hit the pause button. I hit my mouse and hit the pause button. Okay. Where was I? Because I still kept talking. Okay. So you can ask for gifts, and that's what I was saying. You can ask for gifts, and They could be tangible gifts. They can be news that you receive. They could be dreams. They could be someone who you could meet someone with the name, with the same name as the saint. So, for instance, Anthony, you could meet someone named Tony or Antonia, who just brighten your day. There's so much you can do working with saints before you actually roll up your sleeves and get into some big saint magic working. And building that relationship is the most gratifying thing. I assure you that, okay, yeah, when you're desperate and you pray to a saint, you look up, you're in a desperate situation. You look up the patron saint of this situation that you're in, and you pray to them, and they pull you out of a jam. That's an incredible feeling. It totally is. But it's also an incredible feeling to have a long-standing relationship with a saint, to build a relationship with a saint where it gets to the point that you don't even have to ask them. They have your back. Did you hear what I just said? You don't have to ask them. They have your back before shit hits the fan. They're already there. And that is why you build a relationship with them. Also, like I mentioned briefly when I was reading from Judica's book, saints, when you start working with saints, you realize that they kind of hang out in like pairs and like a little bit of a group hang, which is also incredible, because you will find that, for instance, if you work with Saint Anthony, suddenly you'll be somewhere and you'll keep running into images of Saint Lucy. I know for me, it's like, I was, this was about I don't know, time all blends, huh, people, it's sad. But there was a thrift store I used to go to. I know I always bring up the thrift stores, but for me, they're magical places, huh? For me, it's a pilgrimage when I go to a thrift store. Anyway, I was doing some work with Saint Anthony at that time, and I kept seeing Saint Lucy imagery. And that's, so I started to look into that, and I think it was in Judica's book that I read that they tend to hang out together, or they, so in terms of energy. So yeah. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope it was coherent. Again, this is a video series I've been meaning to start. This is not a series, actually it's a video I've been meaning to record for a long time. And I kept wanting to be more prepared, but I just didn't have time to prepare. So I basically just winged it today. Off the seat of my pants. How to give you a little intro on how to start working with saints. I think I've mentioned everything. So it's like the bio, knowing that their feast day is, celebrating them every day, offering them, making offerings to them based on what they like, asking them for gifts, and recording your dreams, and taking note of your dreams, because saints do communicate to us through our dreams. In closing, I wanted to share three books from my library. I'm going to start doing that regularly now, because one, I'm going through my books, and I'm looking to pare down a little bit. Not so much, I'm not a minimalist. Don't look at the background here. There's nothing minimalist about me. But there's some books that I've had on my shelf for 20 years that probably are no longer relevant to me. They may be books, and that's why I mentioned that I was going to do a video at some point once I build up the pile here on the floor in my home office / studio. When I'm going to do a video where I'm going to talk about the books that are leaving my bookshelf and see if anyone, if they resonate, or someone says, oh my goodness, I used to have that book and I lost it and I really want it back, that kind of thing. I'll make it available for people to reach out to me. But that's not what I'm doing today. Today I'm going to recommend 3 books. If you're Italian American or interested in any kind of, if you're interested in Italian American culture, in your history, because if you're Italian American, you have an Italian American history. Now I'm first generation. My parents were Italian immigrants, but I do respect and appreciate that there are a lot of you out there that are 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation Italian American, that your grandparents, great grandparents, or great great grandparents came from Italy, and there's a whole history there that I find, maybe it's just where I hang out on the internet, but I find it's being lost. Especially when I find myself in conversations online discussing how words have been bastardized, how Italian words have been bastardized. And people really, they respond really negatively when I say a word has been bastardized, but it has. Where I've discussed, Southern Italian dialect. Well, there's Southern Italian dialect, and then there's just not even trying the American spelling or pronunciation of something. And people also, Italian Americans that are like second, third, fourth, fifth generation, not knowing that certain terms were and still are racial slurs used against your ancestors. You know what I mean? Like, if you're walking around and you're a 5th generation Italian American or 4th generation Italian American, or even 2nd, and you're referring to yourself as a Dago, stop. Stop now. Stop now and do a little research about where that came from. That's all I need to say. That's all I'm going to say about that today. This is a whole other conversation. And you're welcome, if you're watching my videos, you're welcome to join me on Facebook. I have a Facebook group named after my website, Rue's Kitchen. It's a Rue's Kitchen Facebook group. And you just have to make sure that you answer the 3 questions, or else the mods won't let you in. Where we discuss, occasionally we discuss these things, because it's getting lost. It's getting lost. And as the generation before me, gets older and, can't be bothered, who blames them, right? And the generation before them, well, they're not on the internet to help correct people and stuff like that, and point out, hey, that's not okay. Or you realize that Italians were treated extremely poorly when they immigrated to North America. So here we are. So these are 3 books I want to recommend that may open your eyes. I'm telling you, one of them is a novel, the other 2 are really dry and academic. But I think it's important. And I have more on my shelf, but I figured I didn't want to overload you today. So the first one is Street Corner Society, The Social Structure of an Italian Slum. Okay, this is by William Foote White, revised and expanded, 3rd edition. University of Chicago Press. So you might want to look into finding this one. You may be able to find it on Amazon. I don't know, it might be in the public domain, and you'd be able to find it on Google, on Google Books or Scribed, or all those other places. Your local library, your university library. Recommend it. Another book I recommend. Also, this one is The Saints and the Lives of Italian Americans, an Interdisciplinary Investigation. And this is co-edited by Joseph A. Varacalli, Salvatore Primeggia, Salvatore J. Lagumina, and Donald J. Dahlia. Okay, and this one too, look it up, Amazon, Public Library, University Library, online, Google Books. It might be in the public domain as well. It's an academic read, but I really think that if you're Italian American, you should be reading these books. You need to know. You need to know more about what was going on. Like, you need to know what your grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, parents, what they experienced when they came here from Italy, beyond just what they tell you. Because if there's one thing I learned from interviewing my relatives and my friends' relatives my whole life, Italians are proud people. They rarely opened up about how they were demeaned or treated poorly, because these Italian immigrants, they are the furthest thing from victims. For them, being seen as victims, they may as well, as to put it in, to translate it straight from Italian, I might as well kill myself. So, is what they would say. So, read these books. And then this is a novel, and you may already be familiar with this novel. I think this is actually in the curriculum for Italian American Studies. Yeah, my dream is that my book becomes reading for curriculum reading for Italian American Studies. Here's hoping. But this one is Christ in Concrete. This is my copy, by Pietro Di Donato. It's a novel, and it talks about how Italian immigrants built parts of the United States where they immigrated to. My father was a stone cutter and sculptor. My father, his uncles, his father's brothers, who came to North America and settled in the United States and New England, primarily Vermont and Chicago, Illinois, were stone cutters. They were sculptors. They made monuments. My dad, his line of work was literally carving statues for cemeteries, saints and tombstones. There are works of art by my father and his uncles and my uncle, his brother, that still stand today in cemeteries in Illinois and Vermont and Massachusetts and New York State and in Connecticut. Connecticut has there are cemeteries in Connecticut that have my dad's work is standing in cemeteries there. So for me, this book is close to my heart. It talks about bricklayers and yeah. So that's it for me. Thought I'd take a little moment today, do a little talk about how to get started working with saints, and then promote a little bit of Italian American history literature. All right. Thank you so, if you're still with me, thank you so much for tuning in, and wherever you are, I'm wishing you a beautiful day. Bye-bye.